my colleagues around the table, some of which I like to pick up. One, if, I guess only a dreamer can do this, economists like to dream, if we could get back the reserves, even just half the reserves of Kenyans that are overseas, we would overcome the dollar crunch.
True.
Perhaps half is too much even.
Sure.
Many Kenyans have much bigger reserves than the state has had for a long time.
Yes.
It's been taken out illegally, because if it wasn't, we would know where it is and we would find incentives to get it to come in for the time being, and then maybe go back again and so on. You can't force it in, but that I think is very unfortunate, and particularly because we also there have been exposures that we know, and some of it we like to say it under our breath, and that I think is part of our problem. Two, it's not we have a crunch, a dollar crunch, but also we have a shilling crunch in the hands of government.
Yes.
KRA does not have that cash. And the little that is collected, if you hear stories about how it was used, for example, towards the end of the last administration, and it happens, I'm sure, in many other previous administrations towards the end, it's very sad indeed. I think we must begin, when we talk about having a national conversation, we must speak truth to each other. We must speak truth to authority, and probably we begin to bring into the equation the fundamentals that we know what they are, but we tend to be silent about them in public. And therefore, it's a bit like the example Dr. has just given on how, you would be running away from the shift yourself, and you'd be saying, no, things are very calm indeed. So I really think that we must bring these up. But just for this crunch period, if there was any role and timing for IMF to come in, would be now. Remember, this is their bread and butter. This is the kinds of things they do. When at the end of the tether, that's when they come in to try and assist. Of course, there will be headlines all over, and I can tell you that the medicine will be very, very bitter. But it's not that they will let a country go over the precipice. That can be done. So I really think that, remember, even as we worry about the protests and so on, we must be talking to our main economic drivers, the association manufacturers, and the manufacturers, from what you've said here. I'm sure there's that kind of conversation must go on. Arrangements must be made so to get the economy going. There's hunger, there's drought, and all over the place. I think there are many things to do rather than the grab for power.
I was just looking at the leading exports other than diaspora remittance.
Sure.
Horticulture, 165 billion shillings. Tea, 130 billion. Apparels, 42 billion. Right? That's 2021 data. Coffee, 26 billion. So apparels to the US have actually replaced coffee as the third largest exporter.
Right. Sure.
Right? And then you go to number 5, titanium ore and concentrate. Just come next to coffee. So we've had coffee since, I don't know when, in colonial times. We talk about every day, but just one company called Base Titanium is giving coffee run for its money.
Right.
With all the minerals that we have in the country.
Yeah.
And my engineer Bal would know we work very closely on the oil project in Turkana. And you look at that project would have been online by now if the government was moving at the pace of the investor. That goes on and on for all the minerals that we have. There's a survey that has been done, and we have copper. Copper now is becoming one of the most valuable commodity globally.
Yes.
Yeah, because of electric e-mobility.
Yeah.
But be it as it may, as Kenya Association of Manufacturers, what we've done, because we concentrate on saying, what is it that ourselves we can do? And this year, and for the next 2 years, we have given ourselves 4 pillars. One, we need to be globally competitive as a country, from both taxation regime, regulatory regime, policies, everything, energy. We need to be globally competitive.
Yes.
But even our members need to be globally competitive from the factory floors. Robotics, AI, all these things to be able to compete. Because when you go to the global marketplace, we're competing with everybody. We're competing with Chinese, we're competing with Indians, we're competing with Americans, Europeans, everybody. And Tanzanians next door are moving fast.
Right.
If you go to their beverage companies today, they are bigger than Kenyan companies 10 times. One company. Right? So we looked at that, so that's just one pillar. Then we went and said, what is the second one? Export-led growth strategy. The third one, SME growth. The fourth one, industrializing agriculture, or what we call agriculture for industry. Let's look at agriculture here, let's look at industry here. And we started going and peeling the onion one by one. On export-led growth, we said, what are these opportunities that we have here that we can actually high grade to be a leading player globally, not just in Africa. And I'll give you two examples. One, I've just talked about textile. Is now number 3 leading export. Textile, and you're already talking about one small piece of the value chain, which is called apparels and that we export to abroad. Today, the market for in the US, we have duty-free access, we have quota-free access. Is $100 billion. We only export 550 million.
Imagine.
Mark you, we are the biggest in Africa. Now you can see the problem in Africa. 500 million.
Imagine. I know.
$500 million against a market of $100 billion.
Less than 0.1.
So the market is not the problem.
The market is not the
The
problem.
people to work are not the problem. So what is the problem? Is that we don't sit around the table to see, to put our money where our mouth is as a country. You look at the budget that statement that was released yesterday, almost 3-point-something trillion. How much money are we putting to some of these enablers and some of these value chains?
Sure.
We've been talking about Naivasha for how long? More than 10 years? Dogokudu for how long?
Yeah.
EPZ here has over 600 acres and developed land.
And
today,
I wanted to ask you, is that similar also to the apparels because of the revival of EPZ? How has EPZ been very pivotal in driving that particular
550 million.
EPZ alone?
EPZ, this one, and Waraka.
And Waraka.
And a bit of Mombasa.
And you're not talking about Rivertex and Kikomi.
No. Those are small.
Let us talk different. I mean, I want to take that discussion. The budget should be talking about reviving cotton in the whole of Nyanza, starting from Hispania all the way to Busia. That's a big cotton zone. And if we just put money in, right, into just that one line, say 10% of that national budget goes to just that one thing for 1 year, and focus on reviving cotton in that area, what would that do in terms of just growing the apparel business? Right? Because cotton is something that is a premium.
Yeah.
If you take apparel made out of cotton, you can sell it at a premium rate. So what do? Just put money in black cotton soil. I mean, that's what it's called.
Yes.
All the way from Busia down to Hispania. Right?
Jado.
Kano Plains, whatever it is. And you can pick up parts of the country where that can happen. Even around, Malindi, those areas and so forth.
Sure.
Now, if you just focus on that one thing for 1 year with the budget, what impact would that have on that value chain? Right? But also, this issue of Pesa Mfukoni would happen. Right?
Yes.
The people there would have their money. So I think in terms of the way we drive development in this country, I think we need a paradigm shift. We shouldn't have these big macro budgets that sort of talk big and all these budget statements that when you look at them, they're not actually pointing to an issue. They're pointing to the problem, not the issue. Not the solution.
Yes.
And if we take just one like that, the second one, right, if we look at it, is the issues happening in the semi-arid areas now, and drought and everything else. If we invested purely in finding water and creating areas where people can now graze, right? You grow grass instead of growing maize in that area. You will set up a whole value chain of meat, beef, right? And you're not doing it because you want to consume internally, right? this export-led manufacturing and development in this country is key, because we cannot have the economies of scale in Kenya by supply for us by supplying Kenya only. It will be too expensive. But if you work on the basis that we want to export the equivalent of, say, 20% of the AGOA apparel business, if that's a target, then you can imagine the volumes you have to generate in Kenya. And if you generate that volume, a unit cost in terms of the apparel going to the US is going to be much lower, right? So when you talk about export-led development in this country, I think that's the way to go, right? And we've got to really focus line by line, not to try and do everything at the same time. The budget cannot be stretched to be effective if we're trying to do, 6-7 different issues at the same time.
Daktari, if you allow me, Daktari, just to finish a bit on
Yes.
on export-led growth, and just without belaboring the point.
Yes.